Thanks for listening to the Drummers Weekly Groovecast. You can contact the show at twitter.com/DW Groovecast and through Facebook at facebook.com/Drummers Weekly Groovecast.
Good evening.
I am warning you right now, if you touch my drums, I will stab you in the neck with a knife.
Ain't it funky? Ain't it funky? Mom!
Take it easy. Lower it.
I'm not gonna lower it. I have to do this now.
I don't mind you playing it, but lower it.
Everything get straightened out?
No, we had a problem. I mean, we tried to do everything we could.
What do you mean?
Well, you know what I mean.
Next.
Little trouble there. You're rushing.
Yeah, well, you know, that's just like your opinion, man.
Yeah.
Longtime listeners to this show know that speaking with this week's guest is a really, really special treat for me. On several different occasions in different shows, Tom Brechtlein's name has been brought up in various capacities. We've talked about him as just being a great underrated drummer. We've talked about different tracks that he's played on, and then we've also talked about just different gigs that he's done with like Chick Corea and Robin Ford and Wayne Shorter. Well, we were fortunate enough to actually get the man himself on the show this week. And he is just a tremendous podcast guest. He really details everything from his early music education, the different people that he studied with, the schools that he went to. He discusses his mentors, and then he really gets into some drum nerd details where we start talking about just individual methods which made a lasting impression upon him. And then, of course, Tom really details his long-term musical relationships with great artists such as Robin Ford, Joe Farrell, Wayne Shorter, and of course Chick Corea. The latter of which said, and I quote, "Tommy is an incredibly responsive player. When we play together, he picks up the vibe of the other musicians immediately and complements them well. His rhythms are sparkling and moving all the time. Tommy has to be the most flexible drummer I've ever worked with as far as his musical approaches and drum kit sounds." High praise from one of the masters of music. As we get into today's show, Tom and I talked a little bit off mic about some joiner music to kind of get us into the interview and out of the interview. And he had a couple of really cool suggestions that we're going to use. The first thing you're going to hear going into the show is just a snippet of Robin Ford's band backing up Robin's brother Mark, the harmonica player, on the old Canned Heat tune, On the Road Again. And then after the interview, we're going to do something just a little bit different. We're going to listen to snippets of two different tunes. We're going to hear a little bit of Robin Ford in the Blue Line, the studio version of The Brother. And then we're going to listen to something that Tom said is a little more technical. It's going to call a little bit from his fusion roots. We're going to listen to a tune that he says he gets asked about quite often, and it's a tune by Brandon Fields entitled You Got It. All right, that's it for now. Let's talk to Tom Brechtlein. Tom, man, welcome to the Drummers Weekly Groovecast. It's an absolute honor to have you aboard.
Well, thanks for asking me. This is great. Really great.
Well, man, believe me, it's our pleasure. I want to go ahead and say that your name has come up numerous times on the show.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Do I owe anybody money?
Well, let me tell you, you might after this show, because you're gonna have people get in touch with you that you haven't heard from in years, man. After this,
wow.
no, Tom, it's all been glowing remarks in the past. Essentially, what has happened is your name is probably, the show's about a year and a half old. Your name has come up half dozen times or more in reference to just different things. It could be in reference to your gigs with Chick or Robin Ford, and there was one full segment that we spent some time talking about you as just being an overall underrated, underappreciated player. Yeah. And so it's an honor, man, to have you on the show. Like I said, you've been in demand from some of our listeners. So again, thanks for agreeing to do this. Yeah.
All right.
And much like our other interviews, I want to start off by mentioning to everyone, we are going to start the show a little bit further into Tom's career. We're not going to go all the way back when he was 4 years old. We like to task our listeners, Tom, on this show. We like to tell them they have to do a little bit of drumming archaeology. They need to go back and look at some of your past interviews that you've had in different print magazines like Modern Drummer or so.
Right.
And then what we're going to do today, we're going to get a little bit more into the nuts and bolts of drumming. So what I want to do, Tom, is let's start out first and talk about some of your lessons that you had. And I know from reading a little bit in your past that one of your first teachers you had was a fellow up in Long Island. His name was John O'Reilly. And
Yes.
can you tell us a little bit about what you studied with him? And in particular, you mentioned you had a very well-rounded education with him.
Yeah. I grew up in Long Island, New York, and in a town in Nassau County called East Meadow. And it was great. I mean, it's for music and the arts, fantastic. And it wasn't any private, there weren't any private institutions. These were all public school teachers that were totally into the arts and made it go right to get it through the school system. Of course, it was a different time then. But anyway, getting back to John O'Reilly, we went back. I mean, I've known him for years, and I really credit him as far as to get my basics in. But we did stuff like, studied out of the NARD book, National Association of Rudimental Drumming, the Pratt book, 14 contest solos, and then moving on, and the Cerrone book, and the Wilcoxon, and that was just snare drum. And then we did, as far as for drum set, it would be, of course, Advanced Techniques, the Chapin book, Advanced Techniques for the Modern Drummer, Joel Rothman's Bible of Rock and Roll Drumming, and then we moved on to Charlie Perry's book, Rock and Bass Drum. Really great basics so you can understand stuff. And then I can't say enough about the Joe Casadas book. And we did all that stuff in a half an hour.
Yeah.
Half an hour. I paid him $4. Or my mom did. Paid him $4. And we'd start off with the NARD, and then the Pratt. We didn't get to Cerrone until later on. Then we did, then we'd move on. You get that, and he'd mark down, okay, do this. He'd give me an example. And then we'd go to the Casadas book, and then we'd go to the Jim Chapin book, and then we go to the rock and roll Joel Rothman, and then if we had time, we'd do some mallets.
Right.
He gave me a little glockenspiel that I could use, and I wasn't very good at mallets, but anyway, we did that in the space of a half an hour, and and once you got through the Joel Rothman book, then you went like maybe to Rocket Bass Drum or something like that, and you finished the NARD book, you go to the Cerrone book, but all the while you'd have maybe the Pratt book, and then you finish the Pratt book, you go to the Wilcoxon book, and that was pretty much my junior high school career. I mean, not career, but I'm just saying lessons. And I can't tell you how those 4 books or 5 books, because of their basic value, no bells and whistles, just cornerstone stuff so you can create stuff or understand what you're looking at maybe on YouTube or on a record or when you go to see somebody play, you know what I mean?
Well, you know, Tom,
instead of seeing, in other words, seeing the sauce, tasting the sauce, you get to look at the tomatoes, the onions, the garlic, whatever, and how it's put together. And you say, so next time you taste the sauce, you go, oh, wow, the garlic's just right. And, what did you use? Did you use crushed tomatoes?
Yeah.
Yeah, those are crushed tomatoes. And you had a little bit of diced tomatoes in there too, huh? You know what I mean?
Yeah. One thing that's interesting, several of the books that you mentioned, like the NARD book, the Wilcoxon, the Cerrone, and then, of course, for the drum set stuff, you mentioned the Chapin book.
Right.
Every one of those books are ones that every one of our guests have mentioned that they've worked out of. I mean, these are the Bibles of drumming. We've talked about them on the show numerous times about that there are certain must-have methods and texts that you have to have, that are just, like you said, the basic foundations for the sauce, so to speak.
Right.
Right. So that's tremendous. Now, I know that you spent a little bit of time in school.
Hang on, just to add about that, when you study out of those books, the main thing to realize is to make it swing and have good time.
Yeah,
that's really important. Those things you just go, oh wow, snare drum book. Well, there's got to be a groove to that when you're playing. There's got to be a swing to those. Those solos have to be swung, or they have to have a groove to it. Whatever you want, however you want to put it.
Absolutely. One of our past guests, a great orchestral percussionist, Jack Bell, who was the long-term principal for the ASO, would reach across through the screen and shake your hand, man, because he is such a proponent of, especially in particular, like the Wilcoxon modern rudimental swing solos, about making those things feel good. They've got to feel good and sound good. Yeah, absolutely.
But they're inherently that way. When you start playing, you go like, wow, they got to have a lilt to it or something like that. It whether you know it or not, I guess, with some players, if they're first starting to learn it, it's swinging and they don't even know it. And that's kind of a good thing too,
Absolutely. Yeah.
And then noticing it later, it's like, oh, wow, he's swinging. Yeah, that's good. That's kind of what it's supposed to do, I would think,
Right, and also, the great Philly Joe Jones, that was about the only book he taught out of, was that Wilcoxon Modern Rudimental Swing Solo. So that says a lot in itself right there.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Tom, you studied in college for a little while also, up on the island. And one of the places I know that you studied was Hofstra. When you were in school there, tell us a little bit about, were you a music major, music ed major? What did you do there?
Well, I was a music ed major, but let's go a little bit before that.
Okay.
Where Hofstra was cool, but it was Nassau Community College that I really learned a lot. I went to Nassau Community College prior to that, and I studied underneath a great percussionist by the name of Ronnie Gould, who was with the Joffrey Ballet. He was principal percussionist for the Joffrey Ballet and the New York City Ballet. And this guy, he was great. I mean, he was fantastic. But one of the things, well, there's a lot of stuff that he taught me. And he wasn't, and legit guys are not, especially percussionists, they're not stuck up. They are not stuck up guys. I call them legit guys, orchestral guys. They're they're the coolest guys you ever, they're sometimes hipper than jazz and studio musicians and rock musicians. Well, actually, I can't say that, but they're just a great bunch of guys to hang. And a lot of them play drum set, and a lot of them do other things, But Ronnie, one time I used to go, "Oh, we have a lesson today." He goes, and I'm gonna imitate his voice. He goes, "Tommy, you got to get a book. You got to get a book. You got to write it down in the book. When you get a date, you write it down in the book." He says, "Out of all the guys that are in here," he goes, "you're going to be working, so you already saw a future,
Yeah.
He says, "So the first thing you got to get a book. You got to write it down, like that." And then, but that was one of the things. But the most incredible thing he taught me was, how to, the use of, I call it the legit approach. And I think the late Freddie Gruber touched on it as well, but I learned it from Ronnie, at an early age, when I went to Nassau Community, and I was fortunate enough to study from him because he was. I know I'm getting long-winded about this preamble on Ronnie Gould, but I was really fortunate to study with him because it was just. I mean, he was the resident teacher there, and that's who you studied from. So that was lucky for me, because you never know. Sometimes you get a weirdo or something. I don't know. But anyway, Nassau Community was really great. I mean, Hofstra was great, but I was there for music education, but I didn't really want to be there. I figured, okay, I'm going to get a degree, which I didn't because I quit on my last semester to go on the road with Chick, Korea.
Yeah.
Well, another name fell on the floor there. Okay, fine. So, and I really didn't want to be there, but I mean, it's like I was spending the money. I got some of the money back when I quit, but there were good teachers at Hofstra too. But
was the reason you went to Hofstra because Nassau didn't have a 4-year degree program?
Well, I was going to spend 2 more years at Hofstra to finish out because Nassau Community was a 2-year college. So I got my associate's degree at Nassau Community in music ed, and then I was going to go on, and I figured I could. Well, now you can be a teacher and go on the. I mean, well, not at a university or anything like that, or a high school. But I thought I had this idea, like, well, yeah, I could teach in a school and I can go on the road. And now we're talking. This is a different time, and but my friend, there was a friend of mine at the time. He drew 2 circles on the wall. He says, man, if you want to be a player and you want to do what you want to do, as far as being a teacher in the school system and playing, he goes, you can't do both, man. You can either do this or this. And he goes, which one do you want? And that was a no-brainer. I said, no, I want that. I want to go on the road. I want to do studio work. I want to play. And that kind of set my priorities straight as far as career-wise, But I always loved teaching too. So when I taught at Drummers Collective when it first started out. It was near Times Square at the Sony. I think it was the Sony building, 8th floor. And I used to teach there, but I was young and I was kind of stupid and I was a little full of myself at some point, So I'd show up late and and but I mean, I'd love to teach at that time, but I got my shorts together, just fill in the blank on shorts.
Yeah.
and just said, hey, knock it off. I just had to talk with myself, just knock it off. And then I got more responsible about teaching and like that. So when people would come up and ask me to teach, I said, yeah, sure. And then we would have really, I was about, it's probably when I hit around 25 that I was a responsible human being,
Sure.
But I taught a lot of good guys at Drummers Collective, at the time. And there was a great team. There was Kenwood Denard taught there. And I think Kim Plainfield.
Yeah.
And a lot of great guys who were better than me. And more responsible at the time. I'm talking about 1978 or something like that, 79.
Right.
Like I said, it only took, I said 25, but it only took a year to get, to buck up and say, okay, man, let's, if you're going to teach, and stop it,
You were mentioning that when you were about to finish up at Hofstra, this young up-and-comer fellow named Chick Corea reached out to you, right? Yeah. And you ended up doing a series of auditions for him, and then kind of tell us how those auditions kind of came to pass, what you did in those, and then eventually getting the call to do work with him.
Well, I was taking lessons. I went to take lessons from this piano player, and who was friends with Chick. I mean, and but we were. I wanted to learn how to play jazz trio music, and so I figured I'd take the approach of taking lessons from a piano player who knew a lot about trio music, like Bill Evans and and ask them, like, what do you like to hear played behind you? I'd take another approach instead of learning from a drummer, which in hindsight, maybe I should have had that in tandem with that. So we'd listen to records and he'd tell me, we'd play duo in his living room. I'd bring my drum set over. And then one day, this is when synthesizers were really starting to take off even more, especially in the jazz world. And he bought this little Korg, and he says, would you want to jam with me a little bit before you leave? And I said, yeah, sure, I'll do that. And we started jamming, but it was sort of like, fusion-esque type Latin, pseudo-Latin, for lack of a better word, stuff, and more rock-orientated stuff. But with the jazz, that at the time you had Return Forever, whatever. So we started playing together, and it was burning. And he looked at me, he goes, man, I didn't know you could play like that. I said, well, I'm not here for that. I'm here to learn how to play trio jazz music, And so one thing led to another, and this guy started working with Stanley Clarke. So then he went to do the Modern Man record with Stanley, and Chick was looking for a new drummer, so he mentioned me. And then one thing led to another. I got called, and we auditioned at his house, the keyboard player's house. And I went through. Oh, that's right. I got a call. I was cut in class, and I was so. Chick Corea's office called. That's right. We only had one phone in the house, At the time, I was still living with my mom. I was the last two. Anyway, that's another story. But I was helping her out. Anyway, so I get a call, and he goes, Chick would like to audition you, and he's coming through New York at such time, and this keyboard player offered to have the auditions at his house. So I got a test pressing of Mad Hatter, the Mad Hatter record.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't even released yet. And to listen to that, wow. And then I knew all the other stuff, like from Leprechaun and some of the Return to Forever stuff. But mostly Leprechaun was great, and my Spanish art stuff. And so I auditioned with 3 bass players. Rick Laird from the Mahavishnu Orchestra, Anthony Jackson, and Ken Smith.
Sure.
Ken Smith basses.
Mm-hmm.
And gosh, I mean, just the price of admission, just to audition and play with Rick Laird, Anthony Jackson, and Ken Smith. I'm some hodunk from Long Island, and it's like, and I'm like, whoa. But and we did stuff. The first thing he pulled out was the one step, which was on the Friends record, which wasn't even mastered yet.
Did you try to cop that Gad shuffle?
I had no idea what it was. I didn't have anything to hear from. Yeah. I didn't have any reference.
Right.
But he played a little bit for me, and then we played it, and then, but the next part was the modal section of Cappuccino, which is on the Friends record. And my bad singing, I'll tell you, it's the part that goes, first of all, the tune goes, right? So the part that goes, bum bum da 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 da, that part. which I call the Elvin section, And so I'm going, okay, yikes. Then we did the vamp from Dear Alice, which goes, that's the one that goes, da 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 dee da 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 dee da, boom, boom, jammed on that. What else did we do? I think we blew a little bit together, and then that was it. And I did that with all 3 bass players, which each was 2 hours long. I'm like, holy. So by the end of the day, I was toast. And I didn't think I played very well, but at the end there was hope, because he says, "I'll talk to you soon, Tom." And I went like, okay. So I held on to that. I'll talk to you soon. And then, now we come to where I'm cutting class. It was about maybe two weeks later or something. And Chick was coming into town with Herbie Hancock. There's another one that went on the floor. And he, that's right. I was with my girlfriend. I was cutting class, and my mother called at my girlfriend's house and says, "Chicory's office was on the phone. They want to invite you to Carnegie Hall. They're doing, Chick and Herbie are playing." I went, holy crap. So I call up. They have tickets waiting for me. I zip on down in my Delta 88 to the city, which was only about 40 minutes away, an hour on a bad day. And got to Carnegie Hall, and I was in a box seat with the management, and nobody's telling me anything. I'm going, holy crap, do I have the gig or what? And this is the first time Herbie and Chick went out. And it was amazing. It was totally amazing. And all my heroes were there, like waiting in the hallway. Dave Liebman, John McLaughlin. Who else was in there? Those other guys. I'm seeing this parade of people that I've listened to on records that I thought I'd never see in my life. Saw Herbie, and it's like, holy Christmas. I mean, you had to pinch yourself, Anyway, so said hello to Chick, and he says, "Well, let's hang out tomorrow." I'm like, nobody's telling me anything, right? So, so I hang out, and then I hang out until the gig, and then I got invited to the second night at Carnegie Hall. And in between, they had a little break in the concert, so they called me backstage, and he says, "Hey," and so Chick goes, "Tom, can you go back home, get your drum set, and go to this certain address, and after the gig we'll play a little bit?" I went, "Sure." Jeez. So I drove all the way back to East Meadow, put the drums in the back of the car, went back into the city. This is really working for your gig, which is fine, at the Chicory, for Christ's sake. Anyway, so I come back and go to the address and set up my stuff, and there's Jeff Berlin, So I'm auditioning now with Jeff Berlin. So I played with Jeff, and Jeff, of course, he played great. It's the first time I met Jeff. I think Jeff was playing with Bill Bruford at the time, maybe, or something like that. But I had never met him or heard of him at the time. And he played fantastic. He played great. I mean, he nailed everything. So I'm thinking, okay, well, Jeff's got the gig. I don't have the gig. I thought I played lousy again, which is the case with all of us, What's it called? Self-deprecation. I don't know what the right word is, but,
Yeah.
So I was leaving as I was packing up. He goes, "I'll talk to you in a couple of days, Tom." And then at 10 o'clock at night, February 10th, 10 o'clock at night, 1978, I get a call from Chick. And I'm figuring, okay, well, he's going to say, "Thanks, but better luck next time." And he said, "Hey, Tom, so listen, you want to go on the road with me?" And I said, "Absolutely." He said, "Well, okay, here's a couple of records I want you to listen to. I want you to listen to Tito Puente, Samedi Palmieri, and The Love Supreme, and a couple of other records he suggested, and check those out. And our tour manager will give he'll talk to you, and you give him all your information, and we'll get all stuff for you, and welcome aboard. I said, thanks. So I remember my whole family was sitting in the living room at the time at night, and there's a little, you should call it a foyer or whatever, near the stairwell. It's actually almost a private type of. That's where the phone was. I hung the phone up, and then I just screamed to the top of my lungs, going, "I got it!" I said I couldn't believe it. It was wild, and it was really great. And I think the best thing about the whole thing was I beat odds with my mom because I wanted to quit school and live in the city and starve like every other New York musician at the time was doing.
Mm-hmm.
Get a loft, hang out, play all night, and get gigs in the city. And we used to be at odds about it. And I remember, it was a nice little moment. She came up to me near the phone, where the phone was, and everybody else was talking. Nobody even noticed us. And she whispered in my ear, and she goes, "Now I know why." I thought that was really a great moment. That was the best part about the whole thing. Really.
That's tremendous, Tom. That's a great moment, man. Yeah.
Yeah, it really is, because I get it. Your parents want the best for you. And, getting a degree in some circumstances, getting a degree that's a great thing, But if you know what you want to do, and you have the passion for it, maybe finishing school isn't the right. I don't know, or maybe going back later is a good thing. I'm not supporting quit school, kids. But if you really know what you want to do and you need to bypass that, then so be it. Go ahead.
So Tom, after you got the confirmation from Chick, is that the primary thing that precipitated the move to LA then?
Well, I still wanted to live in New York, but I kept on getting work in Los Angeles, and I had some friends there, and then I figured I'd do a little test run. I stayed in LA, then I started getting work in New York. And it was wild. Now, it seems glamorous. It wasn't that. It was hard work, it wasn't all like high profile stuff, but it was really good stuff, and I was crashing when I was doing the test run in LA. Number one, what was stupid is I didn't have a car, and I was crashing at two of my friends, their apartments, So it kind of helps to have a car,
Oh, absolutely.
So finally, when I made the move to LA, eventually, it's actually when I met my wife. That's when I got the car. But I was still working. I was working. It was great. I mean, it was, So, and then we got a place, and, I never really wanted to live in Los Angeles. I wanted to stay in New York, and I wanted to just keep on commuting and whatever. And I started getting work in Los Angeles, and the musicians, fantastic musicians there, and really, really great. And I was treated well there, and got a lot of other gigs being in that area. It took me 5 years to get used to it, but then I kind of went, well, home is where you surround yourself with people that you care about and like, and and that's home.
So, Tom, regarding the Chick gig, in a previous interview, you mentioned an interesting concept that I'd like for you to elaborate on a little bit. You mentioned that during either just jamming with Chick or in rehearsals, he started talking to you about a concept he called the grand pulse.
Yeah. That's an old. I've recently come back to it. It's sort of like, instead of course, you need to subdivide, for time reasons and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think what he was trying to convey about the time, but I think once you have the subdivisions down, then try and go the other way, like half notes or whole notes.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Sure, absolutely.
Like the first whole note is 1, the second whole note is 2, I kind of heard Jack DeJohnette do that one time in a recording, and it finally brought that thing back to me, which was on the stand. I think it was Standards 2 or maybe Standards 1. They were playing Stella by Starlight, and he was playing brushes. And I remember I just came back from a gig, and the keyboard player, really great piano player, Kagi, we were coming back from a gig, and we hung at his house for a minute. And he goes, check this out. And I go, oh, man, I think I'm music out. I really don't want to listen to any music. So he put Stella by Starlight on. And Jack DeJohnette was playing brushes on it, beautifully, I might add. But, there wasn't 2 and 4 or any kind of subdivision. He was just playing phrases. Mm-hmm. And I realized I came to this, I guess, epiphany of, oh, my God. I said the changes, I guess it has something to do along the lines of Grand Pulse, I guess. He's playing the changes as a beat. Like the first change, da da da, this beat 1, da da da, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever you want to subdivide. But he was gliding and playing so musically. Of course, he's also a piano player, so that has a lot to do with it too. But it was just, to me, maybe other guys knew about it, but it was, at the time I went, oh yeah, at least I got it. Everybody gets something when they're ready to get it. You know what I mean?
There's a similar concept that Bob Moses talks about in his book Drum Wisdom. He calls them resolution points. He calls them resolution points. And essentially there's a lot of the same bones to that same thing as Chick's Grand Pulse.
Yes.
That his resolution points can be made through changes, it can be made through melodic phrases, and it can also just be made by specific rhythmic points within a measure as well. So that's kind of interesting. Yeah.
Well, getting to Bob Moses, who's a genius.
Yes, he is. Another great underrated player.
My first breakthrough lesson was with him.
Interesting.
And the lesson was in a club. And I'll tell you, he was playing with Harvey Schwartz on bass and Steve Kuhn on piano. And I think we were in Copenhagen. And Dave Liebman took me to that gig. And I was so impressed the way Bobby was playing, because he was just gliding over and he was right there. So when they were packing up, he had already been packed up, and I guess Harvey was packing up, and I guess they were just taking care of business, and me and Bob, and he was very, very approachable. And I say that Dave Liebman brought me to the club, because Dave Liebman was playing with Chick at the time. It was my first tour with Chick. And, Dave brought me he's really great. Anyway, so I asked Bobby, I said, how do you know where 1 is all the time? Now, I was 20 years old at the time, so I'm still learning. I'm flying by the seat of my pants, wondering how the hell I got here, And he goes, you just sing the tune, man. You just sing, I think we did Stella, and I mimicked him. We were playing air drums. He sat, and we were in the club, in the middle of the club. It was empty. He was sitting in a chair, and I was sitting in a chair, and we were just kind of mimicking, like da-da-da, and just play any rhythm you want. So I was playing air drums. We're both playing air drums, but singing the tune at the same time. And he always knew where you were. I go, oh my God, that's the secret, So next night we go. I'll just leave it at that. But there was an incident where I did it with Dick, but it was a kid in the candy store, Pandora's Box, and he looked at me and he went, groove on stage. On, oh my God. He took me backstage and he said, we had a little talk, but at the end he goes, well, we'll do more of that. So he kind of slapped me on the wrist, but he actually dug it, because I was doing it, you know what I mean?
Sure.
And he goes, oh wow. He goes, and then he realized, he goes, well, we'll delve into this some more. In other words, he was kind of saying it was really cool, but he was kind of saying, watch it,
Sure, absolutely.
Because I was trying it the next night, and it was working. And Lehman's looking at it, like, yeah, man, I was like, wow. But I was doing it a little bit too much. But that was the youngster, I guess, in me. Well, there are a lot of youngsters that play like they're old souls, they're old souls. But at least for me, I thought I was going to get fired, but I didn't. I stayed on a few more years,
Tom, I want to talk to you about one of my favorite Chick records that you're on that I don't think gets nearly enough play. And I've actually used a few tracks as just some intro and outro music on the show. I want to talk about a record that was on Electra Musician called Again and Again. First off, let me say this as a quick aside. That label that was around just for a relatively short period of time had some monster recordings on it, just some tremendously cool recordings that I don't think get enough attention. And this, Again and Again, is one of them. That record was recorded in Africa, wasn't it?
Yes.
How did that come about? And then just give us a little bit of information on the tunes.
Well, we were doing a tour there, and it came about with this radio show. And that's why the drums sound kind of weird. Like when the keyboard comes in, the drums sound more direct and they get the tone sound. But when the flute comes in or any kind of acoustic instrument comes in, you get a lot of room sound and sounds trashy. That's the reason why it sounds that way.
But
they only had a limited amount of tracks.
To me, that's part of the charm of that record, though, Tom. It's got a very distinct sound. Whether you think it's a good sound or bad sound, there's something about that sound, man, that is very attractive to me on that record.
Well, I appreciate that because at the time I was like, well, it's the best they can do. So, okay, that's cool. It's like, because that band was really great. Carlos Benavent and Don Elias, who's another mentor of mine. Steve Kujala was fantastic. And of course, Chick. And we made some great music with that band. And the band prior to that too, But, I get a lot of, Christian McBride came up to me one time and said, man, I remember you on, and so did Antonio Sanchez, And my first reaction was, really? I'm going, but no, there's some great stuff on that record. Because that's the only reason why I went really is because at the time it was just the way the sound of the drums were. You had the direct, I call it the direct sound. That's just my only way to describe it. And then the room sound. But then you come to love it later on as I get older, So I really appreciate that, and I appreciate that those guys noticed because I really respect their playing, Christian and Antonio, and I'm glad they love that record too, I'm glad you like it too.
Oh, it's a wonderful recording, and again, one of those that I think it's a bit overlooked, as a lot of those Electra Musician records I think were overlooked. Mm-hmm. There's some tremendous compositions and playing on several of those records. Now, Tom, I also want to talk about, there's another, what I'd consider to be little known thing that you guys did with Chick, and it's another thing that since technology has improved and now we have YouTube that it's available, you guys did a 3-quartet trio.
Yes.
Was it a tour?
Well, no. There was this. Was it that one? I was working with Al Di Meola. This was around 1987 or something like that. I was working with Al Di Meola, and my wife. When I initially left Chick's band, then my wife started working with Chick in capacity at Chicoria Productions, along with Ron Moss and some other people with great staff. Anyway. So Ted Curlin, who's the booking agent, I guess and great booking agent. I think he's one of the top. Yeah, he's one of the top jazz booking agents. He does Pat Metheny and so on and so on. Anyway, so he was booking the trio, and he booked Al at the time. So Dave Weckl couldn't make these gigs, so it was like it was 3 weeks. But I'd be with Al, and then on Al's days off, Ted booked it so there were enough days off. So on Al's days off, I'll fly across Europe and do the trio with Chick, sub for Dave. And then on Chick's days off, I go back with Al. So it was a month it was solid month of work with no days off, which was great. It was switching from electric kind of stuff to trio kind of stuff, that was really great. So we were in, I think it was Stuttgart, And it's on YouTube, yeah.
Right.
And we did the 3 quartets thing. And, of course, I had very bad hair.
Well, I think John will give you a run for that, man, on that video.
The big hair days. Hardly
Yeah.
looked like a jazz drummer at all, you know. So anyway, we did a string of those, and we did the 3 quartets, and Patitucci and I played in a lot of situations together, you know, back in the day. And we had a lot of fun. Basically, that's basically what it was, just a regular trio tour. And the story about that YouTube thing is Michael Brecker was in the wings at the time. He was on the side of the stage listening to it. And at the end of the gig, he came up to all of us, you know, me, Chick, and John, and he said, you know, I memorized all this stuff. I really wanted to come out there and play. We started yelling at him going, why did you come out and play? What's the matter with you? You know what I mean?
Sure.
That would have been great. Oh, excuse me. And it would have been, you know, but the fact that he was standing on the side enjoying it was cool. But it would have been great if he just come out. He knew the stuff. He didn't need the music, you know.
Quick question about doing 3 quartets. That record and those compositions are iconic. And when you were in rehearsal with Chick for that, how closely did he say, Tom, I want you to like really cop the Gad stuff on here versus I want you to do Tom?
Chick just lets you play.
That's great.
You know, and I had already been playing with him, you know, when that, you know, so it's like, you know, I don't think it was a very short rehearsal because I knew pretty much all the stuff already. We went over it. I believe it was in a sound check. There were no rehearsals before. I just went and you go.
Wow. And that's complicated material. Yeah.
The rehearsal is a sound check.
Yep.
And I had done, when he started Mad Hatter, Bunny Brunel and I, when he was first starting to write that stuff, we, just as a test run to record the Mad Hatter to see if everything worked, he called us over, you know, just to invite us to play. And we kind of played some of what the beginnings of that stuff was.
Mm-hmm.
So I was familiar with it a little bit. I mean, not too familiar prior to when they recorded it. As a matter of fact, when they recorded it, he invited me down to the sessions, and I couldn't make it. And I still kicked myself in the pants because I could have seen history being made right there, you know.
Yeah.
So why don't you come down and say hello to Steve? I was like, oh, yeah, absolutely. But, you know, I didn't go. I for some reason, I couldn't make it. I can't remember why, you know. That was stupid. You know, I mean, but the fact is that I got to play that music, and it was, you know, I mean, we were there. It was written down, and you know, I did some, you know, I listened to the record prior to going over there, and then I think we had a rehearsal during sound check,
right,
and then that was it.
Tremendous, man. Now, somewhere I think it was around that time, if not even a little bit earlier, you did some work with Wayne Shorter.
Yes.
I want to talk just a little bit about that.
Well, I was in Los Angeles at the time. Well, of course, you know, that's where I was living. And Larry Klein, great bass player and great producer, gave me a call. And he goes, Tommy, I said, yeah. He says, would you like to play with Wayne Shorter? I said, absolutely. You know, and he gave me the dates, and I went, oh man, I'm sorry, I can't do it. I had this booked and whatever. And he goes, okay, well, cool, man. I'm sorry you can't do it. You know, I hung up the phone, and then I realized what I had just done. I went like, you idiot. You know, like what did you just do? And then those dates that were booked got canceled. You know, and they got canceled, and I was like, wow. And then I went. I think I was doing some gigs in D.C. or something like that, and I came back, and then Jimmy Haslip called, and he says, you know, Wayne's looking for a band. I got Gary Willis he kind of agreed to do it, and would you be into it? And without a heart, I said, yes, I'll do it. You know, I said, well, you know, Wayne would like to meet you, and blah 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 blah. And And so I met with Wayne, and it was great. We had a nice little meeting, and then we set up playing together, me, Gary Willis, and Tom Canning. And we went there 3 times, and it was sort of like those Miles stories you hear. You're playing 3 times, and nobody's telling you whether you got the gig or not. And then after the 3rd day, we found out that we all had the gig. And because he had just recorded Atlantis, which was his comeback record after leaving Weather Report, just fresh off. So we got together, and then we did a tour. We did a tour in Europe, and we did I think it was the East Coast. It was funny. I got a lot of really great feedback from those years. Year and a half or something like that. And then we finished. It was really great. It was just really incredible experience, because I used to go, Wayne, what would you like on this? And he goes, you know what you're doing. He just looked, you know what you're doing. So he pretty much left it up to me, because during the Atlantis record, there were no blowing sections.
Yeah.
So we had to kind of figure them out, and we rehearsed at Wayne's den at his house. So it was really great. It was like, he had a nice little thing to create stuff, and we would just play the heads, because Wayne was correct. He goes, you don't practice blowing, you do it on stage. But I want to mention, in the interim between Chick and Wayne, I played with the great Joe Farrell in between there, which was where I really learned a lot. I really learned a lot from Joe. He was a very giving guy. He was probably the best leader I ever worked for.
Yeah.
Joe Farrell. I mean, we were buddies. He was like my big brother, or he was kind of like my father, because the last 2 years, we worked together with Chick in the early years, but the last 2 or 3 years of his life, which was when we played in his band, me, Bob Harrison, and Kei Akagi, he was straight as an arrow, no drugs, nothing, and you really got to see the real Joe, because the drugs were out of the picture.
Tom, I want to jump ahead a little bit now and go to another one of your long-standing musical relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about how you got started with Robin Ford and the Blue Line.
I was subbing for Tommy Taylor I'm just a little preamble, where I met Roscoe Beck. I met Roscoe, I was working with Christopher Cross, and I met him at the Universal Amphitheater. And I think maybe Roscoe just moved to LA, I can't remember. But he was working with Robin. And then later on, I got a call from Christopher Cross's tour manager saying, would you mind helping a guitar player friend of mine out? I said, what's the guitar player's name? He said, a friend of mine. That's what he said. And I said, yeah, no problem. I said, what's your friend's name? He goes, Eric Johnson. And I go, oh, yeah, well, what does he play? He says, he plays guitar. This is before Tones and Obvious Music, of course. And I said, yeah, sure. So he gave me this address, and I went down, into somewhere in Hollywood, and met Eric, and we played, and Roscoe was there playing. And we played. I had met Roscoe before. We had worked together, I think, during the Jennifer Warren's. I did Jennifer Warren's record, not the famous Blue Raincoat record, but it was around that time. But the tracks I did ended up on an album called The Hunter. Mm-hmm. Of course, Vinnie Colaiuta plays on the famous Blue Raincoat record. So anyway, started jamming, and then Roscoe and I got along musically. It was great, And so he just approached me, and he says, listen, man, I play with Robin Ford on the weekends sometimes, when Robin's in town. We play at this place called At My Place, which is in Santa Monica. He said, usually Vinny does it, but, when sometimes Vinny has to go out of town or he can't do it. Would you be interested? I said, absolutely. Yeah, sure. So about, maybe 2 or 3 days later, I get a call from Kazu Matsui, who was a shakuhatsu player producer. And he goes, Roscoe Beck comes, you come highly recommended from Roscoe Beck, you know. I'm doing a project, and we start next week. And he kind of interviewed me, Kazoo. I said, okay, I'll come down, you know, whatever. So anyway, so we had rehearsals at the studio. I think it was Jenny Foodie Studios in North Hollywood. And we started playing, and Russell Ferrante was on the thing, and Robin was. So we were playing at these rehearsals. So at the end of the rehearsal, Robin comes up to me and he says the same thing Roscoe did. He says, you know, usually Vinny plays with us, but would you mind playing with us when I'm in town and we do these? I think Robin was either living in San Francisco or New York. I can't remember. I think he was in San Francisco. But anyway, so I said, sure. So then about maybe a couple of weeks later, Robin calls me up. He says, listen, we're going to play at my place like this weekend. You want to do it? I said, absolutely. So we did it, and we hit it off, you know, and we just really hit it. I think what sealed the deal with Roscoe is he turned around and he looked at me and he went, we play this one tune, I think it was called Bad Intentions. And, turns around and he looks at me and goes, Texas Double Shuffle. And I went, yeah, like I know what I'm doing. And I'm thinking, what the hell is he talking about? And I said, oh, okay. Well, I thought Mel Lewis Shuffle, and I figured, you know, what I learned in Advanced Techniques for the Modern Drummer, you know, was the first. So I played a shuffle. You know, I knew what a shuffle was, you know, and so and Roscoe turned around and he gave me a wink like, yeah, man. Like that. Like, yeah, right. Yeah, good, cool, man, you know.
How was it working with Robin from a standpoint of, you've already worked with several iconic leaders. You've worked with Wayne Shorter, Chick Corea, Joe Farrell. How was he in comparison as far as, like, was he hands-on, hands-off, that sort of thing?
Both ways, you know, and he was very giving, you know. I mean, leaves a lot of space as long as, you know, the groove is there. And you know, it's funny when you have a group of guys together, you know, there may be guys that can play technically and better or whatever. When you have the right combination of guys, it just comes naturally. Like, I learned a lot from Roscoe and Robin about blues and, you know, just, I don't know, just about groove and more about deeper groove, you know. Basically, at the time, they just put cassettes on as we were traveling. And I just listened. I think as far as music goes, maybe not conversationally, I'm a good listener. You know, or I gravitate to things that I like, just like anybody, I guess. You know, and then you pick up that concept, and then the guys that know more about it will just maybe steer you in the right direction. Mm-hmm. And that's how you learn, really. You know, it's not, you know, and one night I remember we were playing in Zurich. This is when we were the Blue Line already, but we did this thing called Love and Cut, which has a lick that goes do 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 do, right? Mm-hmm. That's the guitar thing. And I wasn't getting the right groove or something, and it was like, and I knew I wasn't. You know, I said, well, what is it? You know, and Roscoe went, well, you know, it's kind of like a, you know, and Robin was saying the same thing. So I went, okay, so it's kind of like, you know, you go in you cross-reference and you go, well, it's like a bossa, but it's like a funky bossa, you know. So then I incorporated like kind of a shuffling thing in it with a little bit of the New Orleans thing where it's like in between triplet and eighth note. So I went ding ding da 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 da, and a little bit put a little surf in there, you know, and that was it. Like, for instance, I mean, you know, so anything's up for grabs. What you might think is hokey or corny, just make it hip, you know. It's like, you know, or, you know, I'm not saying play a blues polka. I mean, that's a little far-fetched. But like, for instance, on the first Blue Line record, we did Real Man, which is a John Hyatt tune. So we were in the studio, and I'm saying, oh, geez, you know, what kind of thing could we put on this? Because the vamp is like, da 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 da, you know, on the guitar. So Roscoe turns around and goes, rumba. And I'm thinking, jeez, rumba? Are you kidding me? So just make it funky. Come on, there are blues rumbas and stuff like that. So that opened up. So I just played a version of the rumba that would fit the tune. And it worked. And later on, we did a tune on Roscoe's record called Rumba Number 9, you know?
Yeah.
You know, it's like, I tried to call my baby to stay on the line, you know, whatever.
If you can channel a
And
little
it's
bit of Al
funky.
Jackson.
The rumba is a funky thing. What's that?
I said, if you can channel a little bit of Al Jackson into that rumba, you're going to be in good shape, man.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Like, you know, it's like, I tried to call my baby. Stay on the line. And you get a bass where it goes boom, oh, oh, oh. It's attitude, you know? What the heck, you know? It's good enough for Al Jackson. It's good enough for Sam Lay, you know? Hey, what am I talking about? What the hell do I know? Make it swing. And especially here in Texas, there's some great players that you know, Brandon Temple, drummer, and now Kirk Covington's here now. Well, he's the one that got wind that I was coming to Texas. But Brandon, and there's a guy named Daniel DeFore, was a great jazz drummer. There are all these great players that are here that a lot of people don't know enough about, you know. But anyway,
Tom, you already let the cat out of the bag, man. You told everybody that you are now a proud Texas resident. You're in Austin, right? Yeah.
Well, I remember when I had lunch with with Roscoe. I had just come into town and I bought a hat. Not a cowboy hat. I bought a pork pie hat. And we had lunch and I wore my hat. And he wore his hat. And after we ate, he looked at me and he went, Tom Brechtlein, Texan. So now every time I call Roscoe, he you know, he answers the phone and he goes, Tom Brechtlein, Texan, you know?
Yeah.
Oh, it's great here, man. I love it. It's just really terrific. Everybody's really cool. The musicians, there are guys that would kick a lot of people's asses in New York and LA, let me tell you. Well, you know, now it's, you know, that sounds pretentious that it's only in LA, and it's not. It's everywhere. You know, it's just now with social media and everything, you know, it's just there are great players that kick ass all over the place.
Yeah.
Not just conducive to New York, Chicago, or LA, you know, it's all over the place.
Yeah. So what precipitated the move from LA to Austin, and when did you do it?
We did it. We'll be here for a year. I think next week.
All right.
Yeah. And you know, I'd been in Los Angeles for 34 years, you know. So it was just time for a change, and I figured now with the internet and everything, you know, I mean, you can pretty much, I would think, live where you want. Maybe not for younger musicians. That's not because of whatever. I mean, you know, I've already, you know, for up and coming musicians, whatever. I wouldn't give anybody advice or anything. I'm just saying, for me personally, it was just time to just make a change, you know. And I knew a lot of people here, and I knew there were really great musicians here. I had no idea how many great musicians there were. Man, everybody plays their ass off here. I mean, and jazz-wise too, you wouldn't believe it. You know, the first thing when you think about when you come to, at least me, I had total misconception that it was only like maybe the blues and R&B and whatnot. Let me tell you something. There's an intense jazz community here. And there are guys, I mean, that'll kick your butt up and down. I mean, but happily. Not bad attitude-wise, like, I'm going to kick your ass. You know, it's sort of like, yeah, let's play, you know? It's like, it's really something. And I mean, there's a healthy jazz scene. I mean, as far as players go, I mean, you have what's called the jazz club here is the Elephant Room on Congress. And there's some places in San Antonio, and I don't know about Houston. Well, Houston's going through their thing right now, but, so I haven't really been there. I've been to Dallas, which is nice, But you got some great play and guys that can play everything too. There are guys that play specialty like blues and rock and R&B, but there are also guys that play everything. Like I mentioned, Brandon Temple, who's a great player. Kirk Covington's here playing everything. Who's a genius, by the way. Not only does he play incredible drums, he's an amazing singer. He's a great composer, and he's a great keyboard player as well. That's probably why he plays drums the way he does. That's probably why he's such a great drummer, because he's a great musician, And we've played a couple of gigs where he plays piano and I play drums, and they have a bass player. And he's an incredible singer too. You got to check it out, man. It's he is ridiculous. I mean, I told him, I said, "You're amazing." I said, "I hate you."
So, Tom, these days, what does your practice days and practice schedule look like for your own personal practice?
Well, now that I have, I built a studio in my garage, like a room within a room, for recording files and for also teaching. And now I can go in and practice it's soundproof, so I could go in and practice anytime I want. So now what I've been finding is I'll have a cup of coffee, and you get that caffeine in you, and you go, "Oh yeah, gotta practice," Be nice. So sometimes I'll go in, I think the earliest I've gone in is about 8 in the morning. Or 9, or I'll go in 9:30 or 10 o'clock, and I'll get my Jones, I'll get my fix, so to speak, and work on stuff, and just play for I'll find out it's about 2.5 hours, sometimes 3 or 4 on a good day, but it's like I can actually put in a couple of hours in the morning, and then I can get everything else done now, that I need to do, but I'll have it there,
Are you practicing methods, or are you practicing just things for gigs that are coming up, or both?
Both. I'm trying to figure out, you always figure out new things, and also now with this Soundbrenner stuff and the Polynome and all that, they're really great tools, and I just, work on basic stuff, and then I'll come up with some other stuff and I'll write that down, because right now I'm in the midst of just working on an exercise book. Well, vignettes, like maybe little 15-page things, where they're exercises around the drum set. It's like, I figured you work out in a gym, you don't have to use these exercises on a gig, but they're just things to get around the kit, and, just so you don't have to think about them. So you think about the important things like time and groove, but you have, So I have a name for it, but once we get the website up and running and stuff, you'll know what the name is, and it's a cute little name. But I'll have I'll do like 1, 2, 3, or 4, something that'll hold a person's attention, and then you can use it, and then you can go on to the next one and the next one and the next one, instead of a big volume of stuff, So I document that when I practice.
Yeah, make sure you stay in touch with us. We'll make sure that all the listeners know about that when it comes up, when it's available on the website.
Yeah.
Now, you were mentioning also that, you've got the studio set up for your teaching as well.
Yes.
Are you teaching steady students in the Austin area right now, or are you primarily doing like one-offs with other
No, I'd like to do. That's what I'm working on right now. I'm working with a place called the New School as well, in Austin, and that's run by a fellow named Richard Spencer. And then also privately on my own, I've gotten, I'm just working on that right now, just starting out with that, and so. Just starting to get a couple of students in, and actually also giving Skype lessons. There are a couple of guys that are taking that. I got somebody from Korea. I think it's Korea that wants to take a lesson this week, Skype lesson. So he could make. He's either from Korea or he's from China. I can't remember. I have to. But anyway, so yeah, Skype lessons are available, and then pretty soon we'll have I'll have a website with a whole curriculum that people can log on to and stuff like that. That's what I'm working on right now. So
awesome.
Maybe
man.
I could stay home a little bit more.
Sure. So our listeners would shoot me if I didn't ask you this next question. Let's talk about the gear that you're using. You've had a very long-term relationship with Yamaha and Sabian.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us a little bit about what you're playing these days.
Well, I mean, what I'm using, I mean, I have. That's what happens when you move, you realize how much stuff you got. But right now for live stuff, I'm using the hybrids, the new which sound really great. The toms definitely have the same tone, or pretty much close to the same tone as the Phoenix kit. Mm-hmm. I mean, really rich, really, really nice. The bass drum has a little bit more point than the Absolutes, but it still has a big sound, But it's just a tiny bit tighter, and that's great. And the snare drum that comes with it, which is not 6.5, it's 6. Sounds great. I mean, it's almost like you don't have to have that kit is so versatile, surprisingly so versatile, that very little tweaking, if any, needs to be done. Even if recorded, because now people sometimes they record live, they stream, and yada yada.
Yeah.
When you listen to the playback of these instruments, and they sound great. I remember one time, I think one of the last gigs I did at the Baked Potato in North Hollywood before I left, they record some of the gigs, and the guy who engineered it in the other room goes, "Man, those drums sound great." And I hardly did anything to them. I mean, I think the heads weren't beat, but they were on their way out, And I mean, they sounded great, And so I mean, that's what I'm using live, and I'll use, I mean, depending on what the gig is, either 24 bass drum, 22, or 20 by 16. 16 by 20,
Right.
The other way around. And then 10, 12, 14, and 16. A lot of times here in Texas, the fashionable, one rack tom, 12, and a 14, or 12, 14, 16.
Yeah.
That's the thing these days, But I mean, I really like to use 10, 12, 14, 16, or 10, 12, 14, Sabian-wise, HHX Extremes for crashes. Like I'll have an 18 and a 19. I've been using that lately. I really love that combination. And pretty simple. And maybe an Ozone or what's it called? The Paragon? I think it's called the Paragon China. The Neil Peart.
Gotcha.
Which is great China cymbal. That is really great. It's thin. I mean, I guess you'd call it the brilliant finish one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sounds really great. For jazz, I'll use one of the ugly cymbals for a ride cymbal. I don't even know what ugly cymbal it is, but it's ugly.
Yeah.
And then the new Artisan ride, brilliant finish, either 20 or 22. That's for jazz. And then also for hi-hats now, it's the click hi-hats for like maybe blues or rock 15s. And then the crescent ones for jazz and rock or pop or something like that. The crescents are great. The 14s or 15s. Those are pretty much, I use those a lot for hi-hats. And And let's see, I'm trying to think of any other rides. Oh yeah, my main ride for like stuff is a customized Dave Garibaldi Jam Master 22 or 21, and I put a rivet in it.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And that really, I mean, that's kind of the go-to one that I use a lot, and once in a while I'll use a Dunnet, which or is it Donnet? But I met Ron at the Regina. I met Ron at the NAMM show, I think, and we were talking about snare drums. I did this drum camp in Regina just recently, and we were talking about the Ludwig Superphonic metal, which I think is, Yamaha's come really close. Their new stuff, the Recording Custom, the new stand, that's the closest I've ever heard to a Superphonic.
Yeah. And
it's really fantastic. I had the steel one, which is incredible. But Ron, we were talking about that, and he goes, I'll send you one to try out, and I figured, he's just going to have me try it out just to get my opinion on it. So I think I can't remember what road trip I did. I was on the road for about a month, and maybe it was a week. I don't know. I went out on the road just recently, and he said, what do you want inside the drum? I don't use serial numbers. So I said, excuse me? So I put Rhythm Dog 57, DAWG. And he says, okay, because I don't use numbers. And he gave me one of his metal snare drums, 6.5, and inside is his signature and everything. I was flabbergasted. I didn't expect that, and it sounds incredible. It's another one to the arsenal. And not only did he send me to a nice bag. I had never expected that. This guy, he's a master drum maker, and he's a gentleman. And yeah, I am saying that because he gave me the snare drum. Because who would do that? I mean, come on.
Yeah, he makes great stuff.
He's a great guy. We had some discussions at this drum camp because you're there all the time. You're not going anyplace else. And it was really nice talking to the man. He's really, I can't say enough about him. He's a genuine guy. He stands by. He's always inventing things, and
Yeah.
And,
So Tom, now you're a year into Austin down there. What gigs and what other things are keeping you busy?
Oh, yeah. Oh, one more thing. Carol Colato.
Regal.
Music.
Yes.
Regal tip. 8A and 9As. That's what I use. She's terrific. That's anybody else I forget. Sorry, Carol. I forgot about that.
Yeah, Remo?
Drum cymbals and...
Remo?
Anything else
like drum heads?
Remo.
Yeah.
Of course. Chris Hart. Sorry about that, Chris. I'm using Emperors on the top and Ambassador Clear on the bottom, and on the snare drum, Ambassador coated. And for recording in this studio that I have, I'm also using the Yamaha Phoenix kit.
Gotcha.
Which is ridiculous. They're like the Fazioli, whatever, or the Bosendorfer of drums. Really, they sound great. Okay, so Austin, what's keeping me busy in Austin? Well, I've been playing. Been playing locally. I played. Sometimes I'll get calls from. There's a really great guitar player by the name of Dave Scher. Great guitar player, great songwriter. Been playing with him, and Brandon Temple usually plays with him. But when Brandon can't make it, I'll play because I'm still the new guy here.
Yeah.
And then I'm playing with a fellow named John Blondell, great trombone player, and also Andre Hayward, another great trombone player, played with Lincoln Center Jazz Orchestra. And and another guy, Tommy Howard, great player. People you've never heard of, but it's great. I played with this Jeff Plankenhorn, this group that he put together called the Apostles, and great players in there. They, Dave Scher and Jeff. Jeff's a great slide player, singer. Like dobro type slide player, singer, and there's some great players in that band, and they just get together, and it's like almost like impromptu. They call, and there's almost no rehearsals. People just know what to do. It's amazing, I mean, that was more. It's more R&B kind of. I would say R&B, blues, folky type stuff, and it just keeps you on your toes stylistically. And then like I said, I start to teach here, and I'm trying to think of anybody else I missed in Austin. And then Roscoe and I'll play together occasionally, and in different configurations, and but it's all switching around, it's just great, and you never know what's going to happen. Like the next week, you might not have anything for the week, and then all of a sudden Monday, these calls will start coming in, and you go, "Hey man, can you play here? Can you do this for me? Can you do this?" And you go like, "Oh, there you go." It's not like, as far as I know, like I said, I don't think I'm still considered local here yet. But I mean, even people coming up to me now going like, "Did you move here?" I go, "Yeah, I've been here for almost a year." And they go, "Oh, wow, I had no idea." So, it's almost like starting all over again, which is great because it keeps you, it keeps you fresh, and it doesn't. If you think you're Mr. Big Shot, you're not such a Mr. Big Shot when you go into a new town, which is great because I never thought I was a Mr. Big Shot. People will probably go, "Oh yeah, right." It's true.
Yeah.
I know, it really is true. And if you do think you're Mr. Big Shot, it's a very humbling experience, and you think you're a legend in your own mind. But which is great. And it's nice to know that people that actually don't know who you are, they actually genuinely say, "Man, that was great." And you go, "Thank you." And it's like, boom. And then later on they find out, And so I played a little bit with Eric Johnson again, but it was just for a benefit,
Yeah.
And so yeah, it's been really interesting. And then I went out on the road with Christopher Cross the month of May, and that was a lot of fun. And there's another guy. Well, tonight's going to be fun too. You also have the University of Texas,
Sure.
UT, and then Denton is down the road about 3 hours away. And I'm playing with 2 faculty members tonight, along with John Blondell.
Yeah, is it fusion stuff, jazz stuff, straight ahead? What is it that you're playing tonight with these guys?
Jazz, straight ahead.
Nice, man. Yeah.
At the Elephant tonight.
So, Tom, we're about to power down, but I just want to ask you: do you have any other topics you want to cover, or is there anything else you might want to promote?
Well, I just like I said, the lessons, the online lessons, and anybody who needs any recording, I'm here in Austin. Sort of like I'm like running a mom and pop type bit. I'm just kidding, but yeah, and I'm here, and that's the email address. It's quite simple, and it's nice here, just kind of relaxing and keeping it simple,
Sure. Well, look, man, before we get out of here, there's a long-standing tradition that we have on the show.
Sure.
And what it is, if you haven't heard it before, we like to do a little thing. We call it the Drummers Weekly Groovecast Rorschach Test. And essentially what it is it's just a little quick series of questions that have short answers to them. Like,
sure.
For example, like I might ask you, Coke or Pepsi? And then you would just say whatever comes to mind.
Right.
So,
okay, cool.
Don't want you to think about these answers too much. I just want you to rapid fire. Okay. You ready?
Yeah.
All right, here we go. Snare drum, wood or metal?
Yikes. Metal.
When you're reading charts, do you like them overwritten or just the basics, sir?
Oh, shit. In the middle.
All right. Drum heads, clear
More
or
basic. So,
clear or
more
coated?
basic, but in the middle.
Okay. Drum heads, clear or coated?
Coated.
In-ear monitors or wedges?
Ooh, that's tough. That's tough. Wedges.
New York or L.A.?
New York.
Elvin or Tony?
Oh, man. You're a jerk. Elvin. But, you know.
No caveats, Tom. You're in with Elvin.
I know. Elvin's funky.
What's your favorite symbol right now?
My favorite? HHX Extreme.
When you're touring.
Crash.
Gotcha. When you're touring, buses or planes?
Buses.
Now he sings, now he sobs, or three quartets?
Now he sings, now he sobs.
Barbecue, pork, beef, or chicken?
Yeah, shit. Beef.
PC or Mac?
Mac.
Floor toms on legs or mounted?
Legs.
What's your favorite TV show?
Whoa. Oh, God. Game of Thrones.
Green room catering. Do you eat the food or break out that per diem?
Break out the per diem.
What's your favorite vintage drum kit?
Rogers pre-CPS.
Ooh, that's nice, man. Yeah.
Yeah, Supermatic hardware.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
What is your most valuable method book? If you only got one.
Oh, Joe Quesada's. The Joe Quesada's book I was talking about.
What's your favorite hobby?
Rhythmic Patterns. Joe Quesada's.
Rhythmic Patterns, gotcha.
Yes.
What's your favorite hobby unrelated to music?
Oh, unrelated to music. I don't think I have any hobbies unrelated to music. Oh, learning accents.
Okay.
Like German. Doing accents. That's my favorite hobby.
Nice. What's the most difficult rudiment for you to play?
Oh, jeez. Difficult rudiment. Oh, I know everything, don't I? Holy Christmas. I never thought about that. I would say the standard flam paradiddle.
Got it.
Right, left, right.
Last question. Name any recording that you wish you had played on.
Ooh. Oy, Vatespear. Recording I wish I could have played on. Oh, man. I wish I could have played on a recording with John Scofield. You talking about a tune?
The full album. Is there an album of Scofield's that you wish you would have played on?
Gosh. Damn. How about, even though I could never play like Adam Dite, who I'm a fan of, Uber Jam.
Oh, yeah.
Now, you better qualify that because it's Adam's the cat on that record.
Yes, he
I
is.
could never duplicate what he did on that, but I just would love to play with John Scofield. That's the thing. How's that?
Awesome, Tom. You passed the test, man. You passed
All
the
right.
muster. Man, you've
Am I
been
an official drummer now?
Man, thank you so much, Tom, man. You've just been a tremendous the podcast forum is meant for Tom Brechtlein.
You're going to have a lot to edit, man. I ramble a lot. So there you go.
That's all right, man. But look, just fantastic, man. Thank you for agreeing to be a part of the show. It's been an absolute honor.
Thanks for asking me. I really enjoyed it. It was great. It's a lot of fun.
Absolutely. Well, I'm gonna hit the stop button. Say goodbye to all the good folks out in Groovecast Nation.
All right. See you, folks. And keep it going.
All right. Thanks, Tom.
Thank you, man.
As I bask in post-interview bliss, I never thought I would have Tom Brechtlein singing on my podcast. But dreams do come true, right, Tom? Man, what a great show. Just a real pleasure having this guy involved with the podcast. We hope you like what you heard today. If you did, the next time you're in iTunes, please swing by the Drummers Weekly Groovecast homepage and leave us a short written review. We'd greatly appreciate it, and it helps other like-minded listeners find our show. As always, if you want to reach out to us, there's plenty of different ways you can do that. Our traditional email address is drummersweeklygroovecast@gmail.com. You can also interact with us on social media. You can find us on Facebook. We're at facebook.com/drummersweeklygroovecast. There you can find out what we're up to, and you can always catch up on all of our episodes, as well as you can message us there on Facebook. If you want to tweet, you can find us on Twitter. We are at DWGroovecast or oldschooltwitter.com/DWGroovecast. Shows are available every Monday. You can find us on iTunes, Google Play Podcasts, Stitcher, Podbean, and anywhere that you listen to and download your favorite podcasts. All right, as we get out of here for this week, we're going to listen to Brandon Field's track featuring the wonderful Tom Brechtlein on a tune entitled You Got It. See you next week.